Hey guys, welcome back to another video on my channel. Today is November 1st, 2024. We are 4 days away from election day. And in today's video, I wanted to do some election update analysis on some polling and a little bit on my map. This is not going to be my final prediction, obviously. That's going to come on Monday. But I just want to show you guys where the race is at after we analyze some of these polls. But if you're new to my channel, please subscribe, like this video, put all your comments and suggestions in the section below. And please check out my other content once you're done watching this video. Speaking of my other content, I have recently finished and released my Senate and House final predictions. So after this video, please check out those and let me know any suggestions and any recommendations and questions you guys may have in the comments section. So let's get started on this. The national popular vote between Trump and Harris. And Trump actually leads by 0.3%. Many people don't even point this out. A lot of people on both sides are talking about, let's say, the swing states, and the swing states also favor Trump, but not many people are talking about the national vote as much as they should be. And the fact that Trump's leading by 0.3% and the fact that he's leading at all should prove pretty decisive. Back in the 2020 election, Biden was up by 7.9%. Clinton was up by 1.6% at that time. So in the 2016 election, right now, it would have underestimated her by around maybe half a point. And in the 2020 election, at this point in time, they underestimated Trump by around 3 to 4 points. So what's going to happen nowadays is pretty much up for debate. You know, some people could say that Trump is overestimated. Some people could say that Harris is overestimated. But in the margin of error being around probably 2 to 2.5 points either way would look pretty good for Trump, because let's say that the margin of error ends up being 2 points to the right, and let's say Kamala Harris wins the popular vote by around 2 points. That isn't good enough for her to win the Electoral College. Clinton won the popular vote by over 2 points. She did not win the Electoral College. She only won the state of Nevada. That's the only swing state that she really won. Nevada and maybe New Hampshire, if you want to consider that, because it is one of the other swing states. But, you know, every other swing state across, you know, all the Rust Belt and the Sun Belt, she lost. So speaking of Trump being up in the popular vote, what are we going to expect from this election? Are we going to expect Trump to just gain in those safer states like New York, California, Illinois, Texas, Florida? And I actually did a video on that. I did a video and released it. If you guys want to also check that one out. And I swung all those states the max I could to the right. I included New Jersey too, and all the states that are safer that I could swing to the right as much as possible realistically. And still, we would have a Harris winning the popular vote by around 1 to 2 points. So it's really hard to see Trump winning the popular vote but losing the election. And that's the first thing I want to debunk, is that the idea that Trump could win the popular vote and lose the Electoral College is not impossible, but most likely, like almost impossible, like a 99% chance. Statistically, it's obviously anything's possible, but it's almost impossible for that to happen. And I would be so surprised if that happened, because, you know, that's never really happened before. I don't think that's happened in the history of the US elections. But either way, he's leading by 0.3%. We have a lot of polls in here that have him leading that are pretty credible. We have the TIPP poll. This is a pretty credible poll. Alice Intel was the most accurate poll in 2020, has him up by 2. We have here Reuters Ipsos has Harris up by 1. We have some mainstream polls like CBS having Harris up by 1. Emerson, very good tie. New York Times and CNN both have it as a tie. Wall Street Journal and CNBC have Trump up by narrow amounts. And we have USA Today and Fox News also having this as a narrow race. Trump is up in 2 in Fox News. And most of these are final polls, so I don't think Trump is going to lose that lead in the next 4 days. I don't really think there's going to be too much polls coming out. If we go back to 2020, yeah, the last polls were released on the 2nd of November. So I don't really think that too many polls are going to be released past this point. Maybe like a couple. I wouldn't be surprised if I see like 2 or 3 more national polls, but at this point, it is pretty much done. Harris was leading by 1 to 2 points throughout most of the cycle when she came in. In around July and August, she had led by a pretty consistent amount. I expected her to win by this much, but now, you know, my expectations have changed because the polling, and this is all across the board, have completely flipped on their heads. And the real question is now these battleground states. So Trump does lead the average by 1.1% according to RCP, and a lot of polls are included in here. She does lead in 2 of them by narrow amounts. Trump leads in the other 5 of them. So we have Arizona first. We're going to go through all of them. And in the state of Arizona, Donald Trump leads every single poll except this CNN poll where she's up by 1, obviously within the margin of error. And speaking of the margin of error, this is a pretty humongous margin of error, a 4.4%. That is way too big. Same with this one, a 4.3%. That is a pretty huge margin of error. Donald Trump has been leading this state the whole cycle. This is probably one of his safest states. I'd say he has a over 70% chance of winning it. And the polls in this state are much more accurate than many other states. Same thing with Nevada. Here he leads by 1.5%. This is a state that Harris was leading in. Trump took the lead in the beginning of October, and he has expanded his lead to 1.5%. Harris only leads in 2 polls, and the rest of them Trump has a lead. In some of them, he has a lead outside the margin of error, such as this Atlas Intel poll and the Susquehanna poll. And this was a big surprise, the Susquehanna poll that just came out. This is definitely not a Trump favorable poll, but it has him up by 6 points, which is surprising. The early voting data in both Arizona and Nevada are looking extremely good for Republicans. Trump's not campaigning in those 2 states too much. This next 4 days left, he's going to be campaigning mostly in the Rust Belt, North Carolina too. He's going to North Carolina a few times, Georgia once, but mostly he's staying in the East Coast. He is not returning back to Arizona and Nevada for the rest of these 4 days. And also the polls in Nevada in 2020 overestimated Biden. In 2016, they overestimated Trump, but not too much. That final average had him up by 0.8, and Clinton won by 2.4. In 2020, the final average was actually spot on. So we're going to see what happens. I think the polls in Nevada are going to be more accurate as they were last time, according to RCP's average. Let's go now to Wisconsin, and Wisconsin is a state with arguably the worst polling. As we can see, Biden was supposed to win by 6.8%, 6.7% in that final average, and he ended up winning by 0.7. So he underperformed his margin by 1.5, and Trump overperformed his by around 4 to 4.5. And that is an absolutely atrocious polling miss. Same thing in 2016, the exact same polling miss where they missed it by 6 to 7 points. This time around, we see her. She had just recently taken the lead. She was leading by like 1 to 2 points. Trump led by a tiny bit for a small amount of time. Now she has narrowly retaken the lead, mostly because of this CNN outlier poll that has her up by 6. Once again, this 4.8% margin of error is crazy high, and that is going to be insanely inaccurate. She's not going to win by 6 points in the state of Wisconsin. We did have a Marist poll that has her up by 2 as well. Many ties and also many Trump plus 1s and a 1 Trump plus 2. So the state of Wisconsin, I think, in my opinion, is going to be the state that they missed the most, as we're very used to. This is a state that is going to go in the election as a toss-up. It obviously is a toss-up, but I think right as of now, and this is not my final prediction. We still have 3 days until I release that final prediction. But right now, I do think that once again, Trump is going to be underestimated in the state of Wisconsin. In Michigan, it's going to be a little bit of a different story. Also a state that suffers from pretty bad polling in 2016 and 2020, where you can see right here, the Republican is always underestimated, more specifically Trump. So over here, we have her leading by 0.8. This is another state that she led by 2 points. Trump took the narrow lead, and she has taken back the lead. There is a lot of outlier polls here. Right here, we have Quinnipiac and Susquehanna that have her up by 5 and 4. A huge margin of error of 5 points. Once again, these margin of errors, if they're above 4 points, you know that the poll is probably not going to be accurate. That is a huge margin of error. We have a lot of other polls that are pretty close. A lot of ties, Trump plus 1s, Harris plus 1s, Marist, Harris plus 3. So the general conclusion I have for this state is that it's going to be 50-50. I think Michigan will probably be the closest state in this election, same as 2016. And right now, if I were to give it to someone, it probably would be Harris by slim amount. But once again, not my final prediction until I finally get to that on Monday. Next, the state of Pennsylvania. This is probably the most important Rust Belt state. And this is one that Trump definitely looks the best in. He leads by half a point. And this is a state that is the most accurate out of all the swing states, but still overestimates Democrats by a couple points. I expect Trump right now to win the state by around 1.2%, a very specific margin, but that's the margin I have come up with after doing my analysis county by county. Now, there's going to be a couple polls here that are going to be more accurate than other ones. And as we can see here, he does lead in almost every single poll. 3 polls Harris lead in: the Marist poll, the UMass Lowell poll, and that Bloomberg poll. And all of them are obviously within the margin of error. So that doesn't mean that, if Trump ends up winning the state by 1 point, that this poll is going to be completely off, because Trump winning by 1 point is in the margin of error. And these margin of errors are not as bad as the ones in Wisconsin and Michigan. I think the polling in Pennsylvania is going to be not that bad at all. Right now, I do have Trump winning by 1. So this is pretty much what the average says. North Carolina is our second to last state. And this, to me, is probably one of Trump's strongest states. He leads in every single poll besides CNN. And general thing to note here, CNN is going to be heavily overestimating Kamala Harris this election, 4.5% margin of error once again. So you could say that Trump winning is in the margin of error, but if Trump wins by 3, yeah, it's still in the margin of error, so not that good. And this is a state that he's also been leading in all of the cycle, and I don't see him losing in the state, especially when he was supposed to lose it in 2020, but he ended up winning it by around 1.5%. In 2016, he was also overestimated by a similar amount. I expect him to win the state by around 3 points as of now. And then we got our final swing state, and this is the only one where not a single poll has Harris up. And this is a state that has extremely accurate polling. This is the one state where the polling is actually completely dead on. Here in 2020, at this time, Biden was up by 0.8. He actually won by 0.2, I believe, 0.3, 4.6 in 2016. Trump won by almost that exact same amount, around 4 to 5 points. Right now, Trump's up by 2.6. So we can say Trump's going to win the state between 2 and 3 points from the past elections. And many of these polls all the way, go from a tie to Trump plus 6. But if you take the general average, he's probably right now looking at winning the state by around 2.5 points. So it's looking good for Trump in the Sun Belt. He's up in all the states. The election is really going to be decided on the Rust Belt. And that's what I want to kind of show you guys here. I want to quickly fill out some states that are not really worth going over right now, because we know which way they're going to be going. So I'm going to quickly fill out those states right now for either candidate. Going through the Northeast for Harris, she's obviously going to win all of these states. I'm going to fill out Maine, Nebraska's second, and New Hampshire, Virginia, and Minnesota, because we just want to eye on these remaining 7 key states. So going off of what I just told you, Trump right now is in a comfortable spot in Georgia and Arizona. He's also in a comfortable spot in the state of North Carolina. Right now, I do have the state of Michigan being a toss-up, but Harris is looking like the one who might eke that out by a narrow amount, given that Biden already won it by almost 3 points in the 2020 election. So now is where we get to the states that'll really probably decide the election. I would give Nevada to Trump, going off of the early voting data that it looks so good for Republicans, given that they're actually leading by 45,000. Democrats in 2020 were leading by 40,000. So that's an 80,000 vote swing in Republicans' favor in a state that doesn't have too many people and only represents 6 electoral votes. So now we're at 241 to 268. Trump only needs one more state, Wisconsin and Pennsylvania. And in Wisconsin, we got to remember, this was a close margin. Biden won by 20,000 votes. And if we're talking about an election where Donald Trump has the chance to win the popular vote, I really can't see that she is able to win the state of Wisconsin. And given its right trend, I also see it going in a Republicans' column. Same thing with Pennsylvania. And in Pennsylvania, we have polls to really support that as well. Since Trump does lead the aggregate by half a point, he won by around 1.2%. Given that he was from the state of Pennsylvania, he was from Lackawanna County, Scranton, he was able to swing Eastern Pennsylvania a couple points in his column. And that right there was enough to give him the state of Pennsylvania and the election. This time around, I don't see that happening, and I see Trump flipping the state of Pennsylvania back. And this is kind of where we're standing right now in the race to 270. And this, once again, not my final map, but this is where we stand right now. 4 days left until election day. But anyways, guys, thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe, put all your comments and suggestions in the section below. Like my video if you enjoyed it, and I will check you guys out in the next one.